Hey, and welcome to another Tech Tuesday. This week, I am going to show you my favorite configuration for the Behringer WING. This will give you on stage 48 inputs, 32 outputs, and a very affordable built-in track rig. I can't wait to show it to you. Let's check it out.
Hey, what do you say? Yes, it's that time again. It's Tech Tuesday.
So I'm going to try to break this video up into two sections. The first part, I will go through the gear you need to make this work and how it connects. And then later on in the video, we will do the actual nitty-gritty routing to make that work. So as I mentioned earlier, this would be with a Behringer WING at front of house. The WING would be acting as kind of a hybrid console covering both front of house sound and monitors, which is really a strong suit for the WING. It does a great job on that, and it's perfect for small to medium-sized churches and venues. What we'll be doing is we're using, in this situation, a single AS50 line. It will be connecting from the A port of the back of the WING onto stage, going into the A port on the X32 rack. The X32 rack is really kind of the hero in this situation. All the routing's going to be going through it. That's what we'll show in the later part of this video. So again, we're going from A on the WING to A on the back of the X32 rack. From the B port of the X32 rack, we are going to a S32 or DL32 digital snake. Now, if you're doing the math in your head so far, you'll notice that the S32 has 32 XLR inputs and 16 XLR outputs. The X32 rack, you may be wondering why I'm using a rack instead of a S16 where I could save a little bit of money. Well, like an S16, you have 16 XLR inputs and you have 8 XLR outputs. But where that extra money goes, it's going to be useful for you, is you do also have another 8 outputs when you consider the aux outputs, the TRS bounce outputs on the back of the board. You got 6 aux outputs and you have 2 monitor outputs, and I'm going to show you how you can wire this up so that you can utilize those. This would now give you, instead of 16 by 8, it's 16 by 16. So you're going to get another 8 outputs to work on there. The other big deal about using an X32 rack is you have a built-in expansion slot with a USB interface built into that. Now, what's cool about this is you can use something like the Cable Matters USB over Ethernet extender. This is less than $50. It's $46 right now on Amazon, and it will allow you to connect one side to your Trax computer or Trax iPad, and then the other side to the X32 rack, and you can use up to 100 foot of Cat5 between these two. Now, I did a video on this a little while back. You can find it at the end of this video. There'll be a link to it. But this is awesome because you could have the X32 rack mounted off in the side doing its thing, and as long as it's within 100 foot of your track rig, all you need to do is run one cable, and now you can run as many as 32 channels of tracks through your system. Now, the way we're doing this, because we're only using one cable, you've got a total of 48 inputs that you can run. But again, up to 32 of those can be your track rig. Now, for Ascension Collective, we usually use a track rig of 8 channels. But recently, we set up this exact same system at a church, and they had plenty of open channels. So they wanted to run 16 channels of their track rig. And so we were able to make that happen. But for today, I'm going to show you how you can run 32 channels from the S32, 8 channels of tracks, and then 8 channels of XLR inputs from the back of the X32 rack. All right, so now that we've gone over all the gear that you need for this to work, let's talk about the routing. So we are looking at the X32 Edit app. You can do this on the app or you can do this on the console. It doesn't really matter, but it's easier for me to show you what to do on here. So what we want to do first is we want to set up the Behringer WING to be the clock master and the preamp master. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to Setup. Now, on the console itself, I believe you need to go to the Global tab. On here, it's going to be the Mixer tab. Now, I'm not 100% sure if you save this scene, if it will load these settings, so you might have to do this on the console itself. but there's only 2 settings you need to change. First off, make sure that your sample rate is set to whatever the wing is set to. For me, it's usually 48K. And then here's the big one, synchronization. Instead of internal, it needs to be AS50A, because that is the port that is connected to your wing, and now the wing is going to be the master clock source. Okay, while you're in the setup menu, you're now going to go over to the preamps page, and you're going to engage the AS50A, port A HA remote button, this guy right here, and then just hit OK. This means that now on the Behringer Wing, instead of giving you trim control, it will give you gain control, which is what you're going to want. All right, now we're going to set up the audio going to the wing. When you're doing this kind of thing, you want to imagine your audio is like water flowing through pipes. So we are outputting audio from the digital snake into the X32 rack, and then we're outputting it from the rack to the Behringer Wing, where we're inputting that, and now those are our input channels. So with that in mind, what we're going to do is we're going to close this window. We're going to go to routing, AES50, and then we are working with the outputs going to the wing, which again is plugged into port A. So what we're going to do is we're going to change AS50A 1 through 48. Instead of being these default settings over here, we're going to scroll over and we're going to do user outputs 1 through 48. Once you do this, this will kind of break you out of the 8-channel block mold that the X32 has had for many years, because we can now, again, in routing, we're going to go to this user output page, and you can do whatever kind of patching you want in here. So what I want to do is I want to take my first 32 inputs for the wing are going to come from the 32 inputs of the S32, which again is plugged in through our port B. So what we're going to do is we are going to do outputs 1 through 8 are going to come from B, AS50B 1 through 8. So we're going to click on this box, and then we're just going to do a 1-to-1 patch. And we're going to do that all the way down for these first 32 channels. Get just a mild case of carpal tunnel, and then you'll be good to go. All right, so now that we have 32 channels coming from the B port, the S32, the next set of 8 in this particular video, and you can do this however you want, I want the next 8 to come from my track rig. So I'm going to do outputs 33 through 48 are going to come from card 1 through 8. And again, I'm just doing a 1-to-1 patch on here. All right, and then finally, I want to utilize these first 8 XLR inputs on the X32 rack. You can have wireless mics or a sub snake going to your drums, whatever it's going to be. I want those to be my last set of inputs. So, or outputs in this case. So we're going to do outputs 41 through 48 are going to come from local 1 through 8. And again, just a 1-to-1 patch. Now, I happen to be doing everything in groups of 8 today, but you can mix and match however you want. You got 48 channels to work with. But again, right now we're doing 32 from the S32, 8 from tracks, 8 from the local inputs. All right, next we are going to set up our outputs from the wing to the S32 and the X32 rack. We'll start with the S32. So we have the 16 XLR outputs on the S32. I want those to be outputs 1 through 16 coming from the wing. So to do that, we are going to go again, routing, AES50, and we are working with the outs to the AS50B, because again, that's going to our S32. So these first sets here, 1 through 8, 9 through 16, are what's going to be routed to our XLR outputs. We're just going to simply pass through A 1 through 8 and A 9 through 16, and we're done with that. Next, we want to use the 8 outputs on the X32 rack, the XLR outputs to be specific. So what we're going to do is, again, routing, and now we're going to go over to the XLR outs page. We have 8 XLR outs on here, and we're going to change those to be our next set of 8 coming from the A port. So we did 1 through 8, 9 through 16, so we'll do 17 through 24. Next, this is where things are going to get a little bit weird. Aux outputs, you can't pass audio through the same way we've done so far. For an aux output, it needs to come through the mix engine, which we're not really using the mix engine for anything. But in this case, we're just going to set it up so we're passing through this last bank of 8. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to, again, routing, inputs, and we're going to take these inputs here, and we're going to input on this first bank of 8. It's going to be AES 50, 25 through 32, again, coming through the A port. So now what that's doing, I'm going to close this for a second here, is our first 8 channels on the board, they're not doing anything. This is an initialized scene. You can see everything is unmuted. The faders are down. There's no processing. It's just straight up. So what we're going to do is we're going to take that information and use that as a way of passing it through to our aux outputs. So we're going to go back to routing, our aux outs. And what we want to do is we want to do aux out 1 through 6 is a direct out from channels 1 through 6. Now, because I'm using an initialized scene, as a default, the aux out is sending a post fader output. I don't want to do that. I want to do something pre-fade. The quick way to do that is I'm going to go to this default signal tap page over here, and I'm going to click on input/LC, and then I'm going to just click on those again. You see the color changed. And so now we are doing direct outs from channels 1 through 6 to aux outs 1 through 6. Those channels are carrying AES50A 25 through 30. So the weirdest part of the whole thing, and then we're going to be done, we have to do something a little bit strange for the monitor outputs to work the way we want them to. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my mix engine, my aux page, and then USB left and right. We've got no use for USB in the way this is set up on here. This is for the USB connection on the front. So we're going to click on USB left. I'm going to go to the config page, and we're going to change the source. Instead of being USB left, scroll all the way to the top here, input 7, which you can see is A31, and then for right, input 8, which is A32. Now that we've done that, we can go to our monitor page over here, and we can change the monitor source. So the monitor source is what is going to the headphone outputs and the monitor outputs whenever nothing is soloed. And because we aren't really using this as a mix engine, nothing will be soloed. So what we want to do is we want to click on that and pass through aux 7 and 8. So that is now technically passing to our monitor outputs left and right. However, there is one last weird thing, is that those two outputs, compared to everything else that we've done so far, are also controlled by this monitor level, this physical knob on the front of the X32 rack. So what we're going to do is we're going to turn that all the way up, maybe put a piece of tape or something on it so you know it's going to stay that way. And then we're going to go into the monitor level on here, and we're going to drop it by 6 dB. So we're going to set that to -6. And now that should give you about the same line level signal as all the other aux and XLR outputs that we've used today. And that's it. We now have 48 inputs on stage, 32 coming from the S32, 8 coming from tracks, 8 coming from the XLR inputs on the X32 rack. We have 32 outputs coming, 16 of those are coming from our S16, 8 are coming from the XLR outs, and then 6 and 2 are coming from the aux outs and monitor outs on the console. And there you go. That's a ton of flexibility for a relatively cheap price. It's awesome. It's very, very capable. And I hope this is helpful for somebody out there. All right, guys, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and to share. It really helps us out in the algorithm. You can leave any questions you have in the comment section down below. I hope this is helpful, guys. Until next time, have a great week. Again, this is Chad from Ascension Worship. I hope this has been helpful for you and your team. Come back here every Tuesday for new information.